Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Well, if you really want to know who is winning the global artificial intelligence race, you honestly shouldn't just be looking at lines of code.
Right. Or, the latest software updates. You really need to look at the cargo ships.
Exactly. Because today we are exploring how the insatiable demand for just a single type of computer chip is like physically shifting trillions of dollars across the ocean.
Yeah, and completely breaking international trade laws in the process.
Welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Alex.
And I am Morgan.
It is Wednesday, March 18th, 2026, and we are broadcasting live from the Snarful Solutions Group headquarters right here in Sacramento, California.
And we have an incredibly dense tech article report to unpack for you this morning.
We really do. But before we get into the heavy machinery of global trade, let us take a quick look outside.
Yeah, so if you are tuning in from the Sacramento area today, you can expect that early morning haze to clear right up.
Which is nice.
It is. It is making way for a beautifully sunny high of 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Man, 90 degrees already? That is definitely an anomalously early heat wave for this time of year.
Oh, absolutely. And that heat is actually intensifying and expanding across the entire west and southwest as the week progresses.
Right. Meteorologists are tracking multiple daily and potentially even monthly record highs that are expected to be broken by Friday.
Yeah, it is getting hot out there. Also, just a very important safety note, if you are located in the high plains, please be aware of critical fire weather conditions today.
Yeah, we are seeing some highly gusty winds combining with persistently dry conditions out there.
So please take all necessary precautions over the next couple of days,
For sure. So let us pivot over to the financial markets and see where we landed at Wednesday's closing bell.
Right. Well, the Dow Jones took a slight dip, dropping 156 points.
Which is roughly a 0.33% decline to close out the session at 46,757.
And the S&P 500 stayed relatively flat, giving up just 7 points or 0.10% to finish at 6,690.
Okay, and looking over at the cryptocurrency side of the board, Bitcoin saw a bit of a pullback.
Yeah, dropping $1,454.
So that is a 1.97% decrease, bringing it to a close at $72,479.
Just a slight breather for the markets today.
Yeah.
But you know it doesn't have time to take a breather?
Let me guess. Anyone trying to keep up with this completely wild news cycle.
Exactly. Which is exactly why we need to talk about strong coffee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you need a morning kick without the inevitable midday crash, strong coffee is just an absolute game changer for your routine.
It really is. It is a premium instant coffee that somehow manages to taste exactly like a fresh traditional brew straight from a high-end cafe.
Yeah, I honestly could not tell it was instant the first time I tried it.
Right. But the real magic is in the formulation. It is packed with 15 grams of protein, MCTs, and powerful adaptogens like ashwagandha.
And that ashwagandha is the secret ingredient here. It works to give you clean, sustained energy throughout your entire morning.
Which is huge because it completely eliminates those terrible caffeine jitters that, leave you feeling anxious before a big meeting.
I used to get those all the time. So if you want to upgrade your morning routine, we have got a great deal for you. Just use the promo code SNARFUL.
And that is spelled SNARFUL.
Right. Use that promo code to get 20% off your entire purchase at strongcoffeecompany.com.
All right, so let us open up our feature segment.
Yes, so every morning we pull the most critical insights from our internal tech article report.
Which we call the Morning Star.
Right. And today, the data paints this massive interconnected picture.
It really does. I mean, the global obsession with artificial intelligence has moved far beyond just a purely digital phenomenon.
Exactly. It is now a heavy metal physical reality that is reshaping global trade routes, upending supply chains, and, forcing a rewrite of international law.
The physical infrastructure required to build, cool, and power these massive AI language models is literally shifting the tectonic plates of the global economy.
And to understand the sheer scale of this, we just have to look at the announcements coming out of the GTC conference in San Jose.
Right, where Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, just announced that they're officially firing up their supply chain and manufacturing pipelines.
Specifically to produce the H200 AI accelerators for customers in China.
And Beijing has not just signaled interest, they have officially greenlit their domestic tech giants to start buying.
Yeah, we are talking about massive companies here like Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance, which, is the parent company of TikTok.
And they have been cleared to purchase a staggering 400,000 of these H200 chips.
Wait, 400,000. Let us break down the math on that to really understand the tidal wave of capital moving across the Pacific right now.
Okay, well, these H200 chips are estimated to cost between $30,000 and $40,000 a piece.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when you multiply that by a 400,000 unit order, you are looking at a $12 billion to $16 billion transaction.
I mean, that is just wild. This isn't a standard corporate hardware refresh. This is basically the GDP of a small nation being spent entirely on raw computational power.
Exactly. And what is fascinating about the technology itself is that the H200 isn't even Nvidia's absolute top-tier bleeding-edge model anymore.
Right. Think of it like the luxury sports car market. The H200 might not be the 2026 track-ready experimental hypercar.
Sure.
But if you park it on the local lot next to what is domestically available in China right now, it is still going to win the race by a mile.
Oh, absolutely. It is vastly superior to the local Chinese alternatives currently on the market.
Which is exactly why these companies are willing to spend $16 billion to get their hands on it.
But to make this massive deal actually function within the bounds of international trade rules, Nvidia is having to get pretty creative.
Right, because of the restrictions.
Yeah, they are actually adapting technology from a separate company called Grok to better suit the specific needs and the legal restrictions of the Chinese market.
Because these shipments face intense U.S. inspections, right?
Correct. They are subject to a heavy 25% duty, which, by the way, was originally only supposed to be 15% before regulators bumped it up.
Okay, 25% is a huge tariff.
And on top of that, U.S. officials are looking at capping the sales volume. The numbers currently being negotiated are a limit of 75,000 chips per individual customer.
With a hard ceiling of 1 million chips total allowed into the country.
Exactly.
Okay, wait. Let us pause on that regulatory logic for a second, because there is a massive contradiction here that I think we need to unpack.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, for a long time, the U.S. heavily restricted or outright banned the export of these advanced chips to protect national security, right?
Right. The premise was that giving geopolitical rivals access to top-tier AI computing power was a major military and strategic risk.
Exactly. But a 25% tariff doesn't strip the AI capabilities out of the hardware.
No, it doesn't.
So if a chip is a national security threat at $30,000, it is still the exact same threat at $37,500.
That is a very fair point.
I mean, this sounds a lot more like a financial cash grab by the Treasury than a genuine security measure. How does slapping a tax and a volume cap on a server rack suddenly neutralize a national security threat?
It's a brilliant question, honestly. And it gets to the heart of how trade policy actually functions as a mechanical brake on technology.
Okay, explain that.
Well, from a pure engineering standpoint, you are right. The tariff doesn't alter the silicon at all. But AI development isn't just about having one really smart chip.
Right, you need thousands of them.
Exactly. It is about clustering tens of thousands of them together to train massive models. So the 25% duty acts as immense financial friction.
I see.
It rapidly drains the capital resources of the purchasing companies, making it vastly more expensive to scale up their server farms.
So it's basically a war of attrition on their budget.
Precisely. And the volume caps, limiting a single company to 75,000 chips, prevent any one foreign entity from building a monopolistic, world-dominating supercomputer overnight.
Okay, so it forces them to build slower, giving the U.S. domestic market time to maintain its lead.
Exactly. It highlights the incredibly fine line the government is trying to walk here. They want to protect technological supremacy, but they also cannot afford to lock a golden goose like Nvidia out of the world's largest semiconductor market.
I mean, you really cannot move $16 billion worth of advanced hardware across the ocean without altering the macroeconomic balance of the entire country.
No, you definitely can't.
Those chips have to be physically manufactured, boxed up, and shipped from somewhere. And the data from 2025 shows exactly what happens to an economy when it demands that much heavy metal.
And the numbers are just staggering. I mean, in 2025, the U.S. goods trade deficit hit an all-time historical record of $1.24 trillion.
$1.24 trillion in a single year. That number is almost too large to even visualize.
It really is. And the primary driver behind this historic deficit is a massive, unprecedented surge in American companies importing computer chips, servers, and tech goods.
Specifically from Taiwan, right?
Yes, specifically from Taiwan, all to fuel domestic investments in artificial intelligence infrastructure.
But I think it is crucial to differentiate between the goods deficit and the overall trade gap to understand what is actually happening to the American economy.
Yeah, that is a great point. Because the overall trade gap actually narrowed slightly last year to $901 billion.
Which, to be fair, is still the third highest on record.
Right. But the only reason that overall number didn't break a record is because the U.S. generated a massive $339 billion surplus in services.
Meaning we are exporting a massive amount of intangible products.
Like what?
Like American banking, software consulting, architectural design, tourism. We sell ideas and services to the rest of the world at a massive profit.
Oh, absolutely. But when it comes to physical, tangible items, the heavy metal, the raw silicon, the server racks, we are importing at a historic trillion-dollar rate.
And this creates what economists are calling the trade whack-a-mole effect.
Right. Because the U.S. has spent years placing tariffs and restrictions on China.
And mechanically, it actually worked in one specific metric, right? The goods deficit with China actually dropped by 32%, bringing it down to $202 billion.
But the global demand for tech didn't just disappear. The trade simply diverted to other countries.
Ah, the whack-a-mole.
Exactly. The U.S. deficit with Taiwan doubled to $147 billion. And the deficit with Vietnam shot up 44% to $178 billion.
Wow. And Mexico outpaced U.S. exports by $197 billion.
Yeah. And Chad Bown, an economist at the Peterson Institute, made a fascinating observation about this.
What do you say?
He pointed out that this massive shifting of imports just puts a giant bullseye on countries like Taiwan and Vietnam for future trade policies.
Okay, that makes sense. Because if you are a trade policy hawk in Washington looking at algorithms and raw import volumes, a 44% spike from Vietnam triggers massive alarm bells.
Right. It essentially proves that slapping a tariff on a specific country doesn't magically build a new manufacturing plant in Ohio overnight.
It just reroutes the purchase orders to the next most efficient global port.
Exactly. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a supply chain manager for an American tech company.
Okay.
You might have spent 5 years carefully building vendor relationships, logistics networks in Shenzhen. Then a tariff hits, and you have to scramble to fly to Monterey or Hanoi to set up entirely new manufacturing operations.
Right.
You finally get your Vietnamese supply chain running smoothly, and suddenly, because everyone else did the exact same thing, Vietnam is the new target for trade rebalancing.
So your operations are just in a constant state of flux.
Yes.
But, all of this frantic rerouting to Vietnam and Mexico assumes you actually know what it is going to cost to get those goods through U.S. customs when the cargo ship arrives.
That is the big assumption.
And as of recently, that fundamental assumption has been completely shattered.
Yeah, that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, because the actual legal rule book governing how the U.S. taxes these incoming computer chips and goods just got completely rewritten overnight by the highest court in the land.
Now, before we get into the details of this, we do want to give a quick reminder to you listening.
Right, because our source material today mentions some specific political figures, including President Trump, and covers some highly sensitive political topics like tariffs and U.S.-China relations.
Exactly. So we just want to make it incredibly clear that we are simply reporting the facts as they are laid out in the Morning Star report.
Yeah, we are absolutely not taking any sides or endorsing any viewpoints here. We are just impartially conveying the information and the ideas contained in the original sources.
We just want to help you understand the mechanics of what is happening. So to set the stage for this shockwave, we have to look back at January.
Right. So in January, the trade deficit actually fell by 25% that month, dropping down to $54.5 billion.
And that drop was largely driven by unusually high exports of gold and precious metals, combined with a significant dip in pharmaceutical and automotive imports.
So it looked like a moment of relative calm in the global logistics network.
But that calm vanished on February 20th.
Yes, it did. The Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling stating that President Trump exceeded his authority by using an emergency law to impose sweeping double-digit tariffs on $300 billion worth of foreign goods.
And just to put $300 billion in perspective, that covered nearly a third of all goods imported into the United States.
The legal mechanics here are vital to understand. Historically, administrations have sometimes utilized emergency statutes to bypass the slow, grinding legislative process of Congress.
Right, because it allows an administration to apply immediate economic pressure on foreign rivals.
But the Supreme Court ruled that the specific mechanism used to implement these massive taxes was not legally valid under that particular emergency statute.
I mean, imagine you sign a lease for a new commercial warehouse. You move all your inventory in, you set up your shelving, and you start operating.
Okay.
And then 5 months later, a judge rules that your lease was signed with the wrong color ink, making it invalid. Now, your landlord tells you your rent is going to fluctuate daily based on whoever happens to be sitting at the front desk of the leasing office.
That is a brilliant way to put it, because that is exactly what is happening to U.S. supply chain managers right now.
Yeah. As a direct consequence of the ruling, the administration was forced to completely withdraw those double-digit tariffs.
And you can imagine the absolute chaos that triggered in Washington. They suddenly had a multi-billion-dollar hole in their trade policy and no immediate legislative tool to fix it.
Right. So to patch the hole, the administration scrambled and immediately implemented a temporary 10% global tariff on imports.
But that word temporary is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Because that 10% global tariff requires congressional approval within 150 days to remain active.
Right. I mean, think about the timeline of international logistics. If you are a family-owned electronics retailer or, a new tech startup trying to price out your hardware for a product launch in the fall, you are placing your manufacturing orders in March.
Exactly.
But your cargo ship might not physically dock in Los Angeles until August.
Right. And if that 10% tariff expires in July and a divided Congress fails to act in time, what is the tax rate when your ship actually arrives?
Is it 25%? Is it 10%? Is it 0?
It is absolute logistical whiplash. You cannot plan your pricing margins or your consumer retail costs when the baseline import tax on your core components is entirely dependent on a ticking 150-day congressional deadline.
And to try and rebuild the tariff structure legally, the U.S. has now launched a massive series of new international investigations.
Yeah, they have opened an investigation into 16 different countries for excess capacity.
And in global trade terms, just to clarify, excess capacity is when a foreign government heavily subsidizes its own domestic factories to overproduce goods.
Okay, so they pay them to overproduce.
Exactly. They then flood the global market with these really cheap products, artificially crashing prices to drive international competitors out of business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and simultaneously, they've launched another investigation into 60 different countries regarding laws against forced labor.
I mean, auditing a supply chain across 60 different sovereign nations to ensure total compliance, that is an administrative nightmare for a mid-sized U.S. importer.
Oh, completely. The physical road to get the hardware necessary for the AI revolution into the country is just constantly shifting beneath our feet.
You aren't just managing software development cycles anymore. To survive in the tech sector today, you have to be actively managing international maritime law and Supreme Court dockets just to get your servers plugged into the wall.
It is wild.
It really is. Now, before we wrap up today's incredibly complex trade analysis, we have to talk about something slightly less stressful than 150-day congressional deadlines.
Oh, please.
We need to talk about getting the perfect gift for the sports and music fans in your life.
Yes, because we all have that one techie friend or family member who is notoriously impossible to shop for.
They are the hardest.
But Old Glory makes the entire process incredibly easy. They are an iconic music and sports fan merchandise store with a truly massive inventory.
Yeah, whether you are looking for vintage band tees or, maybe some fresh pins and Isu's golf gear for your weekend tea time.
Oh yeah, I was just looking at some of their stuff. And I actually practically live in my Scooney hoodie during those early morning coding sessions. It is so comfortable.
Right. They really have an unbelievable selection.
They really do have something for everyone. And right now, if you use the promo code SNARFUL at checkout, you can get 15% off your entire purchase.
And again, that is spelled SNARFUL. Just head over to oldglory.com.
It is by far the easiest way to knock out your gift shopping while supporting a great brand.
For sure. So to concisely connect the dots on everything we have covered in the Morningstar Report today,
let's recap.
We are witnessing the physical, tangible toll of the artificial intelligence revolution.
Right.
The insatiable global demand for computational power is forcing companies like Nvidia to navigate incredibly complex geopolitical regulations and multi-billion-dollar tariffs just to sell to the Chinese market.
And that same domestic demand for infrastructure is driving U.S. tech imports from nations like Taiwan and Vietnam to record-breaking trillions of dollars, literally physically rerouting the world's cargo ships.
Exactly. And all of this economic momentum is colliding with the U.S. legal system where the Supreme Court and lawmakers are scrambling to fundamentally rewrite the global rules of trade in real time.
It is a lot to take in, and it really leaves you with such a fascinating, almost unsettling question to ponder as you go about your day.
What is that?
Well, we always conceptualize the AI race as a pure competition of intellect, right? Like a battle of who can write the smartest algorithm, who has the best data scientists, or who can build the most capable neural network.
Sure.
But if AI development requires such a staggering amount of physical international hardware that it literally shifts the trillion-dollar trade deficits of entire nations,
Yeah.
will the ultimate winner of the AI race actually be the one with the smartest software? Or will it simply be the one who controls the cargo ships?
Wow. The digital future is entirely dependent on physical logistics.
Thank you all for joining us this morning to connect the dots on these crucial stories.
We're here to help at Snurful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.